Imposing retaliatory tariffs right now on the United States, hitting billions of dollars worth of goods and energy resources.
Or even a bipolar conflict between China and the United States.
The U.S. China trade war has taken a dramatic turn, and this time, China is striking back hard. In response to U.S. tariffs, China has imposed heavy retaliatory measures targeting billions of dollars in American exports. But the biggest blow, the U.S. auto industry. China has slapped a 25% tariff on American-made cars, making it nearly impossible for companies like Tesla, Ford, and GM to compete in one of the world's largest auto markets. With rising manufacturing costs, supply chain disruptions, and the increasing dominance of Chinese electric vehicle makers, the American auto sector is on the brink of a major crisis. So what exactly is happening? Why did China make this move? And more importantly, how bad is this going to get for American car makers? Let's break it all down. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe for deep dives into global affairs and economic trends. The U.S. China trade war officially escalated in 2018 when the Trump administration imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. The U.S. government argued that China had been engaging in unfair trade practices, including forced technology transfers, intellectual property theft, and state subsidies that gave Chinese companies an advantage. The goal of the tariffs was to reduce the trade deficit, bring manufacturing jobs back to America, and curb China's influence in global markets. China, however, was not about to sit back and accept these restrictions. Instead, it retaliated with tariffs of its own, targeting American exports, particularly agricultural products, to put pressure on U.S. policymakers. While many believed that the U.S. would hold the upper hand in this trade war, the reality turned out to be far more complex. The Chinese economy had evolved significantly over the years, making it less dependent on U.S. trade than it had been in previous decades. One of the hardest-hit sectors in this economic battle is the U.S. auto industry. China has imposed a 10% tax on American-made cars, bringing the total cost of exporting U.S. vehicles to China up to 25%. This move is a direct response to U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods and has major implications for American automakers. Companies like Ford, General Motors, and Tesla have relied on China as a key growth market. But these tariffs now make it much more expensive for them to sell cars in the world's largest auto market. While American automakers struggle with higher export costs, Chinese car manufacturers are thriving. Companies like BYD, NIO, and XPeng have not only captured the domestic market, but have also begun expanding internationally. With government-backed subsidies and investments in cutting-edge electric vehicle technology, China is positioning itself as the global leader in the next generation of automobiles. China's auto industry has undergone a dramatic transformation over the past 2 decades. In the early 2000s, Chinese car manufacturers were largely seen as inferior to their Western counterparts. Today, they are setting the global pace, particularly in the electric vehicle sector. The Chinese government has heavily invested in EV infrastructure, making it easier for local automakers to scale production and innovate in battery technology. Companies like BYD have already surpassed Tesla in EV sales, and China now controls a significant portion of the global battery supply chain. By dominating the EV market, China is not just competing with the U.S. auto industry, it is actively outpacing it. Meanwhile, American automakers are struggling to keep up, facing rising production costs, supply chain disruptions, and declining sales in China due to tariffs. China's government has also made it a priority to transition the country's transportation sector to electric power, reducing dependence on fossil fuels and lowering emissions. The U.S., by contrast, has been slower in adopting EV technology at scale, with regulatory uncertainty and inconsistent government incentives creating obstacles for automakers trying to shift toward cleaner energy solutions. This discrepancy has given China a significant edge in the global automotive race, as its companies continue to innovate while benefiting from a stable and supportive policy environment. The impact of China's counterstrike is being felt across the U.S. auto industry. American automakers now have 2 options: absorb the higher costs and reduce their profit margins, or pass the costs on to consumers, making U.S.-made cars even less competitive in China. Either way, the result is damaging. Companies like Ford and GM, which had been investing heavily in China to expand their market presence, are now facing major setbacks. These tariffs also put American auto workers at risk. If U.S. automakers are forced to cut costs, layoffs and plant closures could follow. The auto industry employs hundreds of thousands of American workers, many of whom depend on exports to China. If those exports decline, so do the jobs that rely on them. Beyond the direct impact on automakers, the tariffs also affect suppliers, dealerships, and ancillary industries that support the auto sector. Many U.S. auto parts manufacturers rely on Chinese buyers for their products, and as demand shrinks, their businesses face financial strain. In an interconnected industry like automotive manufacturing, disruptions at one level create ripple effects throughout the entire supply chain. Beyond the auto industry, China's retaliatory tariffs signal a broader trend of economic decoupling between the two largest economies in the world. As tensions rise, both countries are looking for ways to reduce their dependence on each other. China is strengthening its trade ties with Europe, Africa, and Latin America, while the U.S. is encouraging manufacturers to move production to countries like Mexico, Vietnam, and India. However, shifting production away from China is easier said than done. China has spent decades building a highly efficient manufacturing ecosystem that is difficult to replace. Even if U.S. companies try to move production elsewhere, they still rely on Chinese supply chains for key materials like semiconductors, rare earth metals, and battery components. This economic decoupling is not limited to autos and manufacturing. It extends into other critical sectors such as technology, finance, and energy. The U.S. has imposed restrictions on Chinese tech companies like Huawei and TikTok, while China has responded by curbing exports of rare minerals essential for high-tech production. The trade war is evolving into a broader struggle for technological and industrial supremacy, with both sides trying to secure their economic futures. The future of the U.S. auto industry is now at a crossroads. If the U.S. government does not find a way to resolve trade tensions with China, American automakers will continue to face significant challenges. Some policymakers argue that imposing tariffs on Chinese EVs and batteries could help level the playing field. Others believe that a new trade agreement is needed to prevent further damage to American industries. Some experts argue that the U.S. must double down on innovation and investment in domestic manufacturing to compete with China's rapid advancements. This means increasing subsidies for EV production, securing a domestic supply of critical raw materials, and building a robust charging infrastructure to accelerate EV adoption. Without these measures, the U.S. risks falling further behind in an industry that is rapidly shifting toward electrification and sustainability. One thing is certain: China is not backing down. The country's rise as a global manufacturing superpower has fundamentally changed the rules of international trade. While the U.S. once held unquestioned economic dominance, the balance of power is shifting. The decisions made in the coming years will determine whether the U.S. auto industry can adapt and compete, or whether it will fall behind in the race for global economic leadership. So, what do you think? Should the U.S. impose tariffs on Chinese EVs and batteries to protect American automakers, or should it negotiate a new trade deal with China? And how do you see the future of the global auto industry playing out? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this analysis helpful, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.